Welcome,
Amanda.
everybody, to our workshop, Rewire Your Brain from Fear to Love and Light. Amazing that we all landed up being access consciousness people here. As I mentioned, this is about rewiring your brain from fear to love and light. The first thing to understand is that we almost have two brains. You know, when you talk about whole brain thinking, it's about marrying those two brains. Roughly, you could say we have a left brain and a right brain. And I'm sure most of you know that. In positive intelligence, the saboteur brain is the fear-based brain. Generally, the back of our brain, as well as our left brain, the limbic system, the amygdala, it's where our fight and flight come from. And it's where we could get triggered and go into fear. That is the saboteur brain. So it's our basic brain just for survival, just for keeping us alive. And it was very important to be in this brain a lot when there were wild animals coming to get us, but they aren't right now. And so mostly it's not the best place to be living in this fear-based brain. But when people are very anxious and depressed and stressed and living at 1,000,000 kilometers an hour, they are very firmly seated in that fear-based brain. And that is when our saboteurs are in control. The saboteur brain, the fear-based brain, is about our needs, our basic needs for survival. It's whether we're hungry, whether we've got a roof over our head, we've got shelter, whether we're warm, whether we're comfortable. Whereas our sage brain is a totally different brain. It's about wisdom. The sage brain is moving from fear to love, from fear to positivity, from fear to thriving instead of just surviving. So this is the part of the brain where our wisdom is and our positivity. It's where our inspired action takes place. So this is mostly the prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, and the right brain. And it's also where our 5 sage powers reside. So we're going to really dig deep into the saboteurs and the sage power today, and aspirations rather than just needs. It's much more about your vision. If you think of the visionaries in the world, anyone who's ever made $1 billion is generally a visionary. They don't live in their saboteur brain. They're not controlled by their fear-based brain. They are living in a much higher level of thinking, of wisdom. And that is where we want to move towards in positive intelligence. What PQ does, or positive intelligence does, it moves you from the amygdala over into the prefrontal cortex and right brain. And that is where all of the magic happens. So what is positive intelligence? It is the capacity of your mind to choose positive, productive, loving thoughts and emotions over your negative thoughts and fears. This whole branch of science was developed by Shazad Shamin. He's the founder of positive intelligence. And Shazad Shamin is a Stanford University lecturer. He's also the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Positive Intelligence. And he leads the Positive Intelligence program. I don't lead it. I guide you through it. He's the actual leader. So what is PQ then? You've heard me say PQ and not just positive intelligence. So what is it? It's similar to EQ or IQ. EQ is emotional intelligence quotient. IQ is intellectual intelligence quotient. And PQ is the positive intelligence quotient. So it's just the measure of how much our brain is using our positive, loving brain over that fear-based saboteur brain. So it's how much we're in our sage wisdom. So that's, in a nutshell, what PQ is. Very important to know that positive intelligence actually grows 17 out of 18 of the EQ competency. If you think that emotional intelligence is more important than positive intelligence, think again. Positive intelligence actually develops emotional intelligence. So it's kind of part and parcel. I always wondered, what was the one thing, the one EQ competency that positive intelligence doesn't grow? And it's organizational awareness. So obviously it can't grow that because that is based on the organization that you're involved with. Say now you're in a school, or you're in a corporate environment, or you're in your family environment. environment. It's that kind of awareness. So it grows everything else, your emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, your self-confidence, your self-management, be that emotional, self-control, transparency, adaptability, achievement, initiative, your optimism, your empathy, your service orientation, and also your relationship management. So developing others, inspirational leadership, becoming a change catalyst, influencing others, conflict management, teamwork, and collaboration. And I've honestly noticed all of these increasing and improving in my life, especially the relationship management. I have seen a massive, massive difference. And not just my life, but in my clients' lives as well. What positive intelligence does is it grows our mental fitness. So mental fitness is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. So it's always moving the brain into the positive and away from the negative. And that affects every phase of your life, from performance to well-being and relationships, which is the three main things: health, wealth, and relationships. So Shazad Shamin has a research foundation that he created. He's worked with over 1 million people, including 74,000 coaches around the world. And he has a breakthrough science, and it's based on all of these kind of sciences: positive psychology, neuroscience, performance science, and cognitive behavioral psychology. How I found my way to positive intelligence was basically through positive psychology. I did a course called The Science of Wellbeing on Coursera about 2 years ago, and it was absolutely mind-blowing course. I think they have now had about 5 million people take that course. When I did it, it was about 3 million or 3.5 million. It's crazy numbers of people that have gone through that program, and it's absolutely amazing. When you start the program, you take a happiness assessment to see how happy you are. Now, I've always thought of myself as one of the happiest people I know, and I thought there's no way that I could do this program and actually be any happier than I am right now, because I'm already so happy. But I did the program anyway because I've always wanted to learn, and I love positive psychology. It's my favorite part of psychology. And so I did the program, and guess what? I actually did increase my happiness levels doing that course. And that program, by the way, is entirely free. It's on Coursera. If you want a certificate, you can pay them some money, but I didn't bother. I just wanted the knowledge, and the knowledge was fabulous. And it also works with an app very similar to positive intelligence. I think it's over 8 weeks, if I remember correctly. And you have different things that you do each week where you're building your happiness levels. Really nice course. And that led me to positive intelligence. Yay! Here I am. The research that Shazad has done includes results from hundreds of CEOs and the executive teams. He's done a lot of corporate work, as well as Stanford students, of course, because he is a Stanford University lecturer, world-class athletes. At this stage, it was 500,000 participants from 50 countries, but I'm sure that slide is outdated because I've heard them speak about 1 million, and many young presidents, organizations, families, and forums. All the research is summarized in the book, in the New York Times best-selling book that I spoke about. And I bought a copy recently. I'm so happy to have my own copy now. But when you get into the program and you get the app, you get the full audio book as well as 8 chapters of the book on a PDF. Let's talk about these different regions in our brain where you have what positive intelligence calls your saboteurs, which we're going to go through in depth today. Most of this workshop is going to be about our saboteurs, and the sage powers, which are empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. When you've done the assessment, you'll know exactly what your saboteurs are, and you probably have an inkling of what they are already. You probably know. I absolutely knew before I even did the assessment that I was a people pleaser. I knew that. I've known that my whole life. I've always been one. I knew that was going to come up, and it is my top saboteur. And you probably have an idea of what your top one is. I'm pretty sure you have an accurate assessment of who you are already. As mentioned before, the research revealed that the saboteurs and sage live in entirely different regions of the brain. And the three core mental muscles that they realized or understood or uncovered or discovered that constitute mental fitness are the saboteur interceptor muscle, the sage muscle, and the self-command muscle. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about those today, how to build those three core mental muscles, your saboteur interceptor muscle, the sage muscle, and the self-command muscle, and how positive intelligence will help you do that. So I'm going to give you enough tools and techniques today for you to go away and do this on your own. You don't need to do the program. However, having the app makes it so much easier because it opens up a few times a day, reminding you to do this. And that is where you get the biggest shift, because positive change comes from 20% insight. So 20% of your change will come from what I share with you today, or reading the book on positive intelligence, or watching a video on positive intelligence. But 80% of positive change comes from developing the mental muscle. That is what the program does for you. It strengthens the actual muscle, because the only way to strengthen the muscle, the brain, and rewire the brain effectively is to change your habits. This program has positive habit change built into it so that you can really move forward and shift and see a massive, massive difference. That's how you're going to cause the dramatic shift that you need to weaken the saboteurs and boost the sage. Let's have a look at what these little saboteurs look like and just show you a few of the difference between saboteur and sage over a few slides. The saboteurs are all these little guys that you can see here on the left. They live in the brainstem, the limbic system, and part of the left brain. I'm reiterating what I've said before. This is the 20% insight. And then the sage is in the middle prefrontal cortex. It's in the empathy circuitry of the brain and parts of the right brain. Remember, there's 5 sage powers. The saboteurs motivate you through negative emotions like fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, etc. Whereas the sage motivates you through positive emotions like empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, and purpose. Your saboteurs might generate success, but they will not create happiness. This really hit home for me when I thought about all of the very successful actresses and singers or musicians who die in their 20s, literally because they are so unhappy that they are taking drugs and drinking alcohol and just trying to escape from life. I don't think I've ever watched a movie about an actress or a musician that had a happy ending. They all seem to end in dying of some kind of abuse and deep, deep, deep-seated unhappiness. And that's because the saboteurs are running the show. So it might be the hyperachiever running the show, or the hypervigilant, or the pleaser. It could be any of them. I would imagine the hyperachiever is very much in charge, and pleaser, because those are the ones who want fame and fortune. And how sad it is. And also wealthy people, exceptionally wealthy people, could also be ruled by their saboteurs and not achieve the kind of happiness that you can have if you were being ruled by your sage brain. And so the sage is the way to generate your highest success and sustained happiness. I don't want to just yak on and on. I want to have a conversation with you guys. So I want to know what your top saboteurs are. I'd love to know. Would anybody like to tell us?
I'm happy to start. Seeing as I'm a little bit more familiar with it, I think. It was interesting, Lauren. I've obviously done the saboteur assessment as part of our training. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do it again and see what comes up. Maybe there's something else that I need to be working on. But interestingly, they were the same. My top saboteur is the stickler. And just the name itself irritates me. The picture of the stickler is hilarious. It's the one cutting the grass with a scissor. And when it first came into my awareness that I am a stickler, I am a perfectionist, I know it, it really made me cognizant of how much stress it was actually causing me to sort of maintain and do everything at a level where I feel it's perfect, was causing enormous stress. My second one is the controller. I always just thought it was good leadership qualities. I realized that it does have the shadow to it as well, and I can become controlling when I feel like people are not taking leadership or ownership. Then I do tend to jump in and want to control things. My third one is the hypervigilant, and that is definitely due to circumstances of how I grew up. I grew up with a lot of emotional trauma and emotional abuse, and so I definitely see the correlation there is the hypervigilant.
Yeah, all of those kept you alive, hey? Yeah. Sure, that is wild. Wow, they all sort of go together. Stickler, controller, hypervigilant. I often see those three working in a pack because those are all the ones that are really tight, holding control and trying to keep the environment just so to keep you safe. And I think that they would all come together when you've had a rough upbringing, because these do start in our childhood. Partly we're born with them, but they also develop due to what's happening in our childhood. I'll give you mine as well. Don't worry. I will share mine and then we'll go back into the presentation a bit. But I just thought we needed a little break so we could interact a bit more. Mine are the complete opposite in a way of Nerman. My top one is pleaser. And my second one is hyperachiever. And they also seem to really work hand in hand with me. I have to say that finding out about my saboteurs made me want to hold on to them even stronger, because obviously the basis of pleaser is being kind and loving. And Shazad says, show me a person's saboteurs and I can show you their strengths, their greatest strengths. And he's so right, because my greatest strength when I did the strengths test in the Science of Wellbeing program, my first two in the strength things was kindness and love. And kindness and love is the basis of the pleaser. So I have great pride in this idea that the pleaser is my top one. I'm quite proud of it. Having said that, what happens when the pleaser is overused? Any saboteur is just your greatest strength that has been overused and abused. So what happens if I let my pleaser be in charge? There is a sage way of being in love and kindness. There is a way of being in the sage brain and being loving and kind. But when I am in the saboteur, when it's coming from fear, then it creates resentment. So you don't realize it at the beginning, but what it does, and for a lot of moms, this is so very, very typical, is it leads to the empty cup, where you give and you give and you give and you give. You're giving to the husband and the children and the parents and the dogs and the cats and everybody in your sphere and the friends and everybody who needs you. And then you land up with this very empty cup and you land up resentful. So that is where the pleaser can go very wrong. And also the other negative motivation to be a pleaser is to do it to be liked. The deep-seated fear is that nobody's going to like me if I don't do everything for them. So that's where the pleaser has its kind of shadow side. And then hand in hand with the hyperachiever is always trying to do more, be more, create more, be more successful. And they are driven by this fear of not being successful enough. Again, in my case, I would say it's about not being seen. As a child, all I wanted to be was rich and famous. That was it. That was my goal in this life. I wanted to be particularly famous. I wanted to be like a famous dancer, you know, like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, or like a famous actress or something like that. I really wanted to be out in the limelight. And that is my pleaser, hyperachiever. And those are not bad things in and of themselves. But if they're coming from the need to be liked or the fear of not being liked, then they're not coming from a place of power. And that's where they become a saboteur instead of a strength. So I hope that made a little bit of sense, just to give you a real world, just from the two of us for now, a real world example of what we're talking about. These are not just airy fairy pie in the sky ideas that some scientists came up with. These are real things that all of us are going through and experiencing. And you're going to see that today when we do the saboteur workshop. And that's going to be the real fun part. I'll go back to sharing a little bit more of the information before we get into that. What happens with the program is that at the start of the 6-week program, you get an assessment score. There's 2 assessments. The one where you see the assessment score is one assessment, and the one where you see assessment results, where you see the restless, the victim, the hyperachiever, those results are the saboteur assessment. So one is an assessment just to see how much your brain is in sage. And the other one is an assessment to see what your saboteurs are. And what happens over the 6-week program is your assessment score goes up. They can see that you move more and more into the sage brain. And then you might find also that the numbers will go down in terms of the weakness of your saboteurs. You'll find yourself less and less in saboteur and more in sage brain. When they did the research, they used something called factor analysis. And what factor analysis is it discovers the root cause of something. And that is one of the things I absolutely love about positive intelligence, is that it goes to root cause. I always try and look for the root cause of whatever is ailing me or frustrating me. Knowing the root cause, you can actually start to get the habit change going. We'll get into exactly what the root is now. An example, at the root of all the colors in the world, there are only 3 colors: red, yellow, and blue. So you can make all the other colors as long as you've got the root colors. Remember, we spoke about those 3 core muscles. These are what are at the root. And it's the saboteur interceptor muscle, the sage, and self-command. That is what you learn to do on the program. You learn to intercept your saboteurs. You learn to move into the sage brain, and you learn to practice self-command over the brain, because the brain at the moment is running you. And unfortunately, it's the negative part of the brain, mostly if we are highly stressed or anxious, which is most people, especially this time of year. So let's talk about the saboteur interceptor. Let's get into it. There's the 10 saboteurs we've spoken about, the 5 sage powers. The biggest saboteur that we have, and every single one of us has this, is the judge. Everyone has the judge. What do we judge? We judge ourselves, we judge others, and we judge circumstances or situations. And we are constantly judging all the time. And the judge is kind of the root of all of the saboteurs, because the judge is creating all the chaos. And then the saboteurs are just making all the little mischief. So here are the other 9 saboteurs. So there's 10 in total. The judge is the main one. It's called the master saboteur. And then you get your controller, the puppeteer holding the strings. And then you have the hyperachiever, the restless, the stickler, the pleaser, hypervigilant, avoider, victim, and hyperrational. You don't have to remember them all now. You're just looking at them at the moment to identify which you think sound like you or look like you if you look at the pictures. So the judge saboteur, as I said, is the master saboteur. And it's the one that creates a whole lot of negative self-talk and negative talk in general. It's the one that complains, bitches, moans, and stresses. It's the perfectionist and the pessimist all rolled into one. And it really does wreak havoc in our lives. I said already, what are we judging? Ourselves, others, and circumstances. But the most brutal of all is ourselves. If you have a very harsh judge and people find you harshly judging them, you can bet your bottom dollar that you are judging yourself even more harshly than you are judging others. And the harsher your judge is, the more unpleasant you are to others as well as to yourself. And that creates a lot of drama and pain in your life, and a lot of low self-esteem as well. The judge affects us by dropping our self-esteem, creating stress and anxiety in our lives. It damages our relationships, negatively impacts our health, and it lowers productivity. So I did a little chart of all of these. Your self-worth, what happens when you judge yourself very harshly is you go into guilt and shame, which is the lowest of all emotions. If you've ever looked at that chart of all the emotions, guilt and shame are right at the bottom, and self-blame, so any kind of blame, and then unforgiveness. And this creates low self-esteem. It can create mental breakdown. And at its worst, the harshest judge will actually cause someone to commit suicide. So it can actually lead to death. In terms of your health, having a very harsh judge can also lead to greater stress and anxiety, also depression, physical tension that can lead to chronic tension, and that leads to lower immunity, heart disease, and also can result in heart attack or stroke and eventually death. Your relationships, having a very harsh judge will make you a very harsh and critical person and make you resentful of others, hurtful. It causes a lot of conflict in your relationships. If you've got a lot of conflict in your relationships right now, or have had at any time in your life, you know that you've got a very harsh judge, or you had a very harsh judge. And this can lead to isolation, which can again lead to depression, which can lead to the end of your relationships, or not looking after yourself and letting yourself go and not living the life that you want to, not thriving. Having a harsh judge can also affect your career in a bad way. It makes you a perfectionist and, as I said, a pessimist. So you tend to procrastinate because you're so afraid of making a mistake that you don't even want to start. And it makes you unproductive, uncreative. It leads to many, many poor decisions, and that can lead to failure, no growth in the business, or actually losing your job or losing your career just from having a very, very harsh judge. That negative self-talk is so dangerous. This is one of the most powerful things to change for people: lessening the effects of their judge, strengthening their sage, weakening their judge, and just becoming a happier, healthier person. So here are my results that I mentioned. Oh, there we go. Stickler is my number 3. I couldn't remember. This is my original test when I first started the program. All of these numbers went down to the point that my victim and hypervigilant are actually non-existent. And all of my numbers went down when I took the test after the first run through of the program, or the first or second. I've been through the program 3 times this year. Now, you might be wondering, are negative emotions good for you? And the thing is, negative emotions do serve a purpose. They do serve a purpose. They are good for you. So they're as good as pain is for you. So if you were to put your hand on a hot stove, how long would it take you to take it off? I actually did this by accident the other day. It's so weird that this is used as an example in positive intelligence, because I put my hand on the stove and it wasn't even a second that I had it there and my finger was burnt. So is pain good for you? For less than a second, pain is good for you. And so Shazad believes that, yes, negative emotions are only helpful for 1 second as an alert signal. I think most of us stay in negative emotions for longer than 1 second. But positive intelligence, this whole program is designed to help you reduce the amount of time that you stay in your negative emotions. We want to reduce that as much as possible so that you can get to the point where it's less than a second, like putting your hand on the hot stove. You instantly know, oh, I don't want to be there, and you change your mind. This ties in so well to something I was watching recently, channeled information, where They said circumstances don't matter, only your state of being matters. Which state of being do you prefer? And it's about choosing a state of being that you would rather have. So I made a list for myself of all of the states of being that I would rather have. And it really helps to know that. If you have any negative emotion, I find it really helpful to know what emotion would I rather want than that, so that I can shift myself from the negative emotion. Let's say I'm feeling stressed to feeling peace. Or let's say I'm feeling irritable to feeling probably also peace. Or if I'm feeling miserable to feeling joy. Oh, and there's a wonderful way in positive intelligence of shifting you quickly into joy. It's called unconditional joy. I absolutely love it. One of the quickest ways to do it is to just think of something that causes you immense joy. So you think of something like, for example, you just won the lottery. You just won the lottery, and you just start celebrating as if you just won the lottery. If you just won the lottery, would you celebrate like this? Would you say, oh, yay, that's great? Or would you go like, oh, so excited? What about if your team won? What about if you're watching the rugby and we just won the World Cup, but not just anywhere in the world, but in South Africa, we win the World Cup? We'd be going like, do you remember what it felt like when we won the World Cup? It's amazing. So what about you won a trip to some beautiful island that you, Patricia and Haley, are already on? So you go to this gorgeous island and you go like, whoa, yes, I'm really on this island. Like that picture behind you, let's say it was actually real and you were really there. Imagine. That is the kind of celebration you want to have. And that is unconditional joy. And you can choose to have it at any moment. You don't have to wait until the circumstances are in place. You don't have to wait until all the conditions are there. I find the more that I do celebrate, this little celebrate step, the more happy I feel, and the more things that start coming into my reality that I actually want. I have noticed that in terms of manifesting, that is the thing that gets me there fastest, just feeling absolute, like crazy, ridiculous joy. And the more silly you feel when you are celebrating, the more effective it is, the more it works for you. Okay, so do you want to try it? Does anybody want to try it? Does anybody want to get silly with me? Anyone want to get silly? Are we going to celebrate? You know, it helps to, like, you know, when I sometimes do it, it's when I'm in the shower and I created a playlist for myself called my Get Happy playlist. And it's get longer and longer. I think I'm on about 200 songs now. I found all the songs that really get me like rocking and rolling and dancing and feeling good and like clapping. And I play these songs like loud. I put them on the TV and then I play them. And then I just dance around and I get really happy. And it honestly shifts everything. It shifts everything, because imagine how much more you can create if you experience that happiness. Choose unconditional joy. It's absolutely fantastic. So what are the benefits of rewiring the brain? Obviously, now we're going to turn around everything that was going wrong. Where we had low self-esteem, we now have self-love. We have self-respect. We have self-forgiveness. We now have a high self-esteem, and we are empowered, we are confident, we are ready and raring to go, we are loving ourselves, we have just got it, baby, we are in, we are doing this, we've got this. It's that amazing feeling of feeling really good about yourself and good about life. And in terms of your health, you are feeling calmer and yet more joyful. So you can feel excitement as well as peace, and you're feeling more fulfilled. Your mental fitness is all happening, and that is leading to a healthier heart and vibrant well-being. And did you know that people who have positive self-talk rather than negative self-talk, they have done studies and determined that they live 10 years longer on average than a person who has negative self-talk. So that is a massive reason to start weakening the judge and weakening that negative self-talk. In terms of your relationships, you're going to be kinder, you're going to be more connected, you're going to be more compassionate, more supportive, more grateful, and therefore you'll have more harmonious relationships. You will see improvements in your marriages, with your children, with your parents, with your friends, with your colleagues, with everybody around you, with just the man on the street. You will be friendlier to the person at the grocery store. It's just everything improves. Like a rising tide raises all ships. In terms of your career, you're going to be more relaxed, yet more motivated, more productive, more creative. You'll be more successful because you're going to become an action taker. And that's because you're moving more and more into the sage brain, which creates that inspired action. I have found all of these to be true in my life, every single one of them. And my life has been changing radically since I've been on the program. We're going through those 3 core things. We've done the saboteur interceptor. I've only spoken about the judge on purpose because we're going to do the saboteur workshop after the break. Our next one, building the sage muscle. The sage lives in the region of the brain associated with positive emotions, that unconditional joy, peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, and big picture vision. By taking this program, you can become more of a visionary, more of the sage, having sage wisdom. And that's what happens when you operate from the sage perspective. I'm going to tell you the stallion story, which is about the sage perspective. There was a man, I think he was in the East, like Thailand or something, a farmer. He went into town one day and won this award for the best stallion in the whole neighborhood. And he went back to his farm, and all of the neighbors came around because they wanted to celebrate with him. They were so happy for him. They were proud of him. It was an amazing achievement, and they were very excited. And he just threw up his hands and he said, well, who knows what is good and what is bad? And 3 days later, the stallion was stolen because some thieves also heard that the stallion had won this amazing award. And so they stole the stallion. And all of the neighbors came over to the farmer to commiserate with him. They were upset for him and they wanted to just make him feel better. And he said, well, who knows what is good and what is bad? And then 3 days later, everything happens in 3 days in this town. 3 days later, the stallion manages to break free from the thieves. He likes it back at his old farm and he races back home. But on his way, he picks up 3 wild mares. So he arrives back on the farm with 3 wild mares in tow. And so all of his neighbors come around and they're like, wow, I'm so happy for you. This is amazing. Let's celebrate. Let's get out the champagne. And he is like, who knows what is good and what is bad? 3 days later, obviously, the son of the farmer is busy breaking in one of the mares and he falls off the mare and breaks his leg. And the neighbors come around to commiserate, but they know what the farmer is going to say. He is going to say, who knows what is good and what is bad? But then 3 days later, war breaks out in the whole country. And so the army come for conscription. They come to get all of the young men and take them off to war. And guess what? The farmer's son doesn't have to go because he's got a broken leg. So the moral of the story is the sage perspective is we never know what is good and what is bad. So we might as well choose a positive perspective because you know what Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Whether you think negatively or you think positively, that is what you're going to create. So you can choose your perspective. You can choose to find a gift and opportunity in everything, or you can choose to fall apart when bad things happen. Circumstances don't matter. Only your state of being matters. Which state of being do you prefer? And you get to pick. And our mind is capable of this. Our mind is capable of choosing a positive perspective, choosing love and light over fear. And that is exactly what the program does for you. It rewires your brain from that fear-based brain, from where we will go when things go wrong, we go into the negative. It rewires it all the way from there into when things go wrong or things go right, you are feeling positive. Access has that beautiful question we ask, how does it get any better than that? And Olga has perfected that sentence by saying, how does it get even better than that? How does it get even better than that? Things just keep getting better and better and better and better. In Access, we ask questions. In Positive Intelligence, there is a slightly different way of rewiring the brain. Both ways work, they just work differently. And this has been clinically proven to rewire the brain. And you can see on an MRI, when you have done the Positive Intelligence program, you can see how the brain actually grows. You get more gray matter in the prefrontal cortex and the right brain, and how in the amygdala and the base of the brain where the saboteurs and fears reside, you can actually see it's atrophied. There's less gray matter in that area and the left brain. So you can see on an MRI in about 6 to 8 weeks how this program has rewired your brain. So has everyone got the sage perspective? Did you like the salient story? Another way of putting it is asking the question, what's great about this? Or what's right about this? Every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity. Every outcome or circumstance. And sometimes you can only see this when you look back in your life. You don't see it while it's happening. You only see it later. Which perspective is true? The saboteur says this is bad. The sage says this is the gift. And the answer is whichever you believe becomes true. Whatever you believe is the truth. Your saboteurs will look at it and go, bad, 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 bad. And your sage knows that there is a gift and opportunity in there somewhere. So how do we get to the fork in the road? We're going to do something called PQ rep. And then you get to pause and choose. That's when you intercept your saboteurs and move away from this perspective is bad and move into this is actually a gift. Love is driven by your sage powers. The sage powers are empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. And we're going to get a little bit more into those now. Empathize is compassion that you would have for others. Explore is the curious, open mind. Another of the sage powers is innovate, where you create creative solutions, you think outside the box. Then navigate, where you're aligning your actions and your values, consulting your wiser, older self and asking what they would do about a situation. That's how you navigate. And activate is taking decisive action. I call it inspired action, also called laser focused action. And I can tell you a story about that from my side. In my last 8 years that I've been online, I have been incredibly distractible, like moving from one thing to another, changing niches all the time, shifting, changing, creating too many websites, too many YouTube channels, too many social media channels, just too much of everything, because I went after one shiny object after another, one strategy after another. And since I came to PQ, I have become way more focused. I am way less distractible. I'm not like Dory looking in every direction all the time. I am completely focused on positive intelligence and doing the work of positive intelligence and moving my coaching business forward in a way that I never was before. And I absolutely love that about this work. It's really helped me on the business level. The 3 gifts technique are the gift of knowledge, the gift of power, and the gift of inspiration. So when you want to get the gift of knowledge or look for the gift of knowledge, you ask yourself, what knowledge would I need to gain to ensure the payoff in the future is much larger than what this is costing me now? If you're dealing with some problem or challenge or anything that's going on in your life that you would like to shift, just ask, what knowledge would you need to gain to ensure the payoff in the future is much larger than what this is costing me now? That is how you get the gift of knowledge. The next gift is the gift of power. You can see the problem as a weight in the gym that you are using to build muscle, and ask yourself the question, which mental muscle or power must I grow to handle this? Would it be the saboteur interceptor? Would it be the 5 sage powers, any one of the 5 sage powers? Or would it be the self-command of your brain? And what's the gift of that power growing? These are nice questions to ask if you want to really look for the gifts. Gift 3 is the gift of inspiration. What you would do here is commit to an inspiring action that you wouldn't have had if this bad thing had not happened. The thing that you are terming as bad, the challenge, the stress, whatever's going on, what inspiring action would you be taking, or are you taking, or have you taken that you wouldn't have taken if this thing didn't happen? And then that action becomes the gift. Does anybody want to share an example of that? Has anyone got an example to share of somewhere where you've been through something difficult and you had to develop a new skill to overcome that difficult thing? Olga's coming on.
Olga.
Hello, everyone. It's just really, truly incredible how fast this can work. Okay, so last night we had to put down one of our doggies, and the state of mind and being and feeling, and it's okay, it's like, yes. And about half an hour later, after we have done lots of clearings and I allowed myself to be as sad as I was, Patrick, my partner, shared with me that when he shared this information with his son from his previous marriage, who hasn't been communicating with him for many years now, responded to the message and sent a beautiful message to him back. And at that moment, when he told me this, that was like, this is the gift. And I was like, thank you, lady, for creating this, because this was such a heartache, obviously, and it was just so beautiful to instantaneously recognize the gift in the situation. And then I remembered, so last night, the nurse who helped us at the vet, when we were leaving, she said, just remember that she's at a better place, and where rainbow, like, of course, and the rainbow is one of my things. And this literally, when Patrick and my son Marty was leaving school, the sun was shining, and all of a sudden, as they left at the gate, the rain started. And then I was like, hello, lady, thank you so much. And I asked them, please look for the rainbows. And they saw the rainbow at our gate as they were leaving. So yes, she is at a better place. And now I know the gift. So I can smile in my heart. I'm not aching anymore. It's just the power of that. Like, what is the gift in it? It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. So yeah, so thank you so much for that.
That is amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That is beautiful. I love the gift of inspiration for you there. And I am sorry about your beautiful dog. I love your dog so much.
No, we do. And yet it's 16 years.
That's amazing. 16
She had a beautiful
That's a
life and a beautiful death. So it was beautiful.
I'm so glad. Oh,
Thank you.
thank you for sharing, Olga. Thank you. And I can say that for me as well, my dad's passing recently, we saw incredible gifts in it. He had a long, long illness with dementia, Lewy body disease, and we lost him over time for a very long time. And there's so much to do before memorial. We didn't even give ourselves a week between when he passed away to when the memorial had to happen, because my oldest brother's father-in-law died an hour after our dad died. And so he had 2 memorials to prepare in 1 week. And so we had to just squash it all in. It was kind of crazy. And there was so much to do. We had to do the things in the church and the flowers. So we were on this treadmill. But on the other hand, my brother from Scotland came down, and it was unexpected and surprised us. And there were all these beautiful moments. And I was able to really receive all those moments in a way that I don't think I would have been able to receive if I hadn't have done positive intelligence. I was just able to be so present in the moment. And my mom had just done her first round of the positive intelligence program. She's now nearly finished the new program that's been brought out. So she'd done the original one, been through a few weeks of Grow, the module that comes after the program. And only my mom and I were able to speak in the church at the memorial. My brothers were not strong enough to do it. Just my mom and I were able to do it. And when I got to her house on the way to the memorial, I did 12 minutes of PQ on the way. And I was so calm when I got there. And I got into her house and I said, I've just done 12 minutes of PQ. I'm feeling so calm. I'm feeling so ready, grounded and ready for this. And my mom said, you know what? I just did 12 minutes of PQ as well. She was sitting on the bed. I'll never forget this moment. We'd both done our 12 minutes of PQ. And I just went and sat with her on the bed, and I just gave her access bars for half an hour. And we just sat there together, just talking and doing access. And it was so special. It was such a beautiful moment of togetherness. And I think memorials either bring you together or split a family apart. And in our case, it just brought our family so together. It was a time of beauty and wonder and joy and togetherness. And it was really special. There are gifts and opportunities even in the toughest moments when we can be present to each moment. And that is the gift that positive intelligence has given me more than anything. Just being able to be present and drop into presence whenever I want to. I have been able to drop into presence in the middle of an argument with my husband, you know, and it's totally shifted. The argument went, and we were laughing and fine again after that. The way I responded to him was completely different to how I would have responded. I just thought, oh, let me just do some PQ reps because it's going to escalate. And then it didn't. It just took all the spark out of it. It was amazing. And so, yeah, I can't begin to tell you how beautiful this program is and what it can do for you, because it's this daily habits that you're creating of really shifting your brain from one kind of brain to another kind of brain. It really, really does the trick. So we're just going to go into the self-command. We have spoken before about how positive change is built from 20% insight, everything that I'm teaching you today, all the stories, everything that we're talking about, whether you read the book or got it from here. Insight is one way to create positive change, but it's not enough. 80% of change is your muscle, and you need to build that muscle. And that is why you do what is called a PQ rep. So let us do some PQ reps so that you can experience this, because once you know what a PQ rep is, you can use this. Remember, I said I'd give you some tools and techniques that you can use and take with you, whether you join the program or don't join the program. So this is one. So a PQ rep looks like this. You're going to be sitting up straight, back straight, feet on the floor, like as if you're going to go into meditation. But like I said, you can do this anywhere. I do them often when I'm driving. I do this when I'm doing housework. I do this when I'm walking on the beach. You can do them anytime, anywhere. But here's the basis of it. So sitting in your chair, I want you to just focus on taking a couple of deep breaths just to get quiet inside yourself. And now notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest or belly as you breathe in and out. Just noticing that. Hyper focusing on just the motion of your belly or chest as you breathe in and out. Just focusing on the breath for 10 seconds longer, only the breath for now. You can start to notice the temperature of the breath as it goes in your nose and the temperature of the breath as it goes out your nose. And now listening for the furthest sound away that you can hear. Tuning into the furthest sound away that you can hear. And now listening for the closest sound that you can hear. And if you haven't heard the sound of your own breathing yet, listen for that now. And now coming into the room, eyes open, and doing a visual rep as well, looking at something ahead of you and noticing the color, noticing any textures you might see, any shadows of light and dark. Really intently focusing on whatever it is that's in front of you. And notice something that you've never noticed before. Okay, and I'd love to hear how you're feeling right now. Do you feel calmer, more peaceful? This is what it feels like to be in the sage brain. And now we can celebrate that we just practiced self-command over our brain and moved ourselves from the negative to the positive, from fear to love, from stress to peace and calm. That is what PQ reps feel like and what they do for you. That is how you practice self-command. And as I say, you can do it anywhere.